I never thought I'd be sitting here, staring at a reflection I barely recognize, wondering how the person who shared my DNA and my face for 24 years could be the same one who calculated my total destruction. They say the bond between twins is unbreakable, a literal soul connection that defies logic, but what they don't tell you is that when that bond snaps, it doesn't just break, it becomes a weapon. Last month, my identical twin sister, Mia, didn't just ruin my wedding day. She systematically destroyed my physical appearance, my career, and my sense of safety, all because she couldn't handle the fact that for the first time in our lives, the world saw us as two different people instead of a match set. I'm currently looking at legal options that would put her behind bars for a long time. And my family is calling me heartless for tearing the family apart over what they call a sisterly rivalry gone too far. So I have to ask you straight up. If your own flesh and blood did something that would permanently alter your face and your future just to make you feel as ugly as they felt inside, would you press charges, or would you let them walk away because they're family? Tell me, because right now, I feel like I'm losing my mind. To understand how we got to this point, you have to understand the dynamic between me and Mia. We weren't just identical, we were the golden twins in our small town. Our parents treated us like a single unit. We had the same clothes, the same hobbies, and the same long, chestnut hair that people used to stop us on the street to compliment. But while I grew up feeling comforted by having a constant companion, Mia grew up feeling like she was in a permanent competition. If I got an A- and she got an A, she was ecstatic. If I got a boyfriend and she didn't, she would find ways to subtly sabotage the relationship by pretending to be me and sending weird texts or acting cold when they saw her in the hallway. Our parents, Sarah and David, didn't help matters. They dressed us alike until we were 16. They bought us one birthday cake with both our names on it. They never encouraged us to have separate identities, and I think that's where the rot started. For me, the twin thing was an accessory to my life, but for Mia, it was her entire personality. When we went off to college, I chose a path in medical aesthetics because I loved the science of skin and helping people feel confident. Mia, on the other hand, struggled. She drifted from major to major, eventually dropping out and working odd jobs, always complaining that I was the lucky one. She didn't see the 18-hour days I spent studying, or the way I saved every penny to start my own clinic. She only saw the end result, me succeeding while she felt stuck. She began to view my success as a personal insult, as if by moving forward, I was leaving her behind in a race she never agreed to run. Things really started to shift when we hit our 20s. I started focusing on my career in aesthetic nursing. Ironic, I know. And I began to take care of myself in ways that weren't twin-approved. I started working out more. I learned how to do my makeup to highlight my specific features, and I finally decided to get a different haircut. Mia lost it. She accused me of trying to kill our identity. She told me I was vain, and that I was trying to make her look like the ugly twin by default. She would spend hours in front of the mirror, tracing the lines of her face and then looking at mine, pointing out tiny differences, a mole here, a slightly different curve of the jaw there, as if she was cataloging defects in a product. She started mimicking my every move. If I bought a new dress, she'd buy the same one in a smaller size just to prove she could fit into it better. If I started using a specific skincare routine, she'd buy the most expensive version of it and brag about how much better her skin looked. It was exhausting, like living with a shadow that was constantly trying to trip me up. But I loved her. She was my sister. I told myself it was just a phase, that she was just finding herself, and that I needed to be patient. I didn't realize that while I was being patient, she was becoming poisonous. The real breaking point was when I met Mark. Mark is the kind of man who sees the soul before the skin, but he also happens to be incredibly successful and kind. When he proposed, I felt like I was finally stepping into my own life. But for Mia, my engagement was a countdown to her becoming irrelevant. She hated that the attention was on me. She hated that Mark could tell us apart from across a crowded room, just by the way I walked. She became obsessed with my wedding preparations. She insisted on being my maid of honor, and against my better judgment, I agreed because I wanted peace. I wanted my sister there. As the wedding got closer, I noticed her behavior getting more erratic. She started joking about how easy it would be to swap places at the altar. She'd say things like, "Imagine if Mark married me by mistake, he wouldn't even know the difference until the honeymoon." I'd laugh it off, but her eyes were always cold when she said it. She began calling Mark behind my back, pretending to be me, asking him test questions to see if he could tell the difference. Mark, being the perceptive man he is, caught on quickly and told her to stop, which only fueled her rage. She felt rejected by the man who was supposed to be her brother-in-law. And she blamed me for stealing the kind of love she thought she deserved just by virtue of being my twin. 2 weeks before the big day, I had a high-profile photo shoot for a bridal magazine, a huge boost for my career. I had spent months getting my skin perfect, using specific treatments that I'm trained in. Mia knew how much this meant to me. She knew this was my dream. On the morning of the shoot, she offered to bring me my special morning smoothie and a new luxury face mask she claimed she bought for us to have a spa moment. I remember feeling so touched. I thought, finally, she's coming around. We sat on my bed, the morning sun streaming through the window, and she carefully applied the thick, green paste to my face with a brush. She was so gentle, almost loving, as she smoothed it over my cheeks and forehead. I should have known. I should have seen the way her hands were shaking. I put the mask on, trusting her, and within 3 minutes, my face felt like it was being pressed against a hot stove. The sensation wasn't just a tingle. It was a deep, searing heat that felt like it was melting through the layers of my dermis. I tried to peel it off, but it felt like it was fused to my skin. I was screaming, clawing at my face, and Mia was just standing there, watching me with this terrifying, calm expression. She didn't move. She didn't grab a towel. She didn't call 911. She just watched. By the time I managed to stagger into the bathroom and thrust my face under the cold shower spray, I could see bits of skin swirling down the drain. The pain was so intense I nearly passed out on the tile floor. I was sobbing, my hands hovering over my face because even the air felt like sandpaper. Mia had mixed a professional-grade TCA chemical peel, one that is only supposed to be used in controlled environments for seconds, with an abrasive hair removal cream and industrial-strength drain cleaner. It was a cocktail designed to disfigure. By the time I got it off in the shower, my skin was raw, blistering, and beet red. I missed the photo shoot, obviously, but that was just the start. The chemical burn was deep, reaching down into the second and third layers of skin. I spent the week of my wedding in the hospital being treated for second-degree burns on my cheeks and forehead. My wedding was postponed. My skin was a mess of bandages, and Mia? She told everyone it was a tragic accident, that she had just mixed up the bottles and was trying to be sweet. My parents believed her. They sat by my hospital bed and told me not to be dramatic when I said Mia did it on purpose. They said I was just stressed from the wedding. But I knew. I could see the satisfaction in her eyes every time she visited me and saw the bandages. She would lean in and whisper, "Don't worry, you're still my twin. We're just more alike now." I felt sick to my stomach. When I was finally released from the hospital, I couldn't go back to the apartment we shared. I went to Mark's place. But I needed my things, especially my laptop and some work files. When I went back to our shared apartment while I knew she was out, I found her laptop sitting open on the kitchen table. I shouldn't have looked, but a gut feeling told me I had to. I found the search history. She had been Googling how to cause permanent scarring and disfiguring skin reactions for weeks. She had researched how to mask the smell of the chemicals in a face mask. She had even looked up how to act like you've made a mistake. It was all there, the cold, hard evidence of a premeditated attack. My own sister had planned to melt my face off. So that's where I am. My sister, the person who is supposed to love me most, intentionally tried to disfigure me so I couldn't be the pretty bride or have my career success. I'm scarred, both physically and emotionally, and I have to decide if I'm going to go to the police and hand over the evidence I found on her computer. My parents are calling me every hour, telling me that if I report her, I'm destroying her life over a mistake. They say Mia is fragile, and that the family will never recover if she goes to jail. But what about my life? What about the fact that I can't look in a mirror without crying? What about the fact that I have to undergo thousands of dollars worth of reconstructive treatments just to look normal again, not even pretty? Before I tell you what I did next and how the confrontation went down, I want you to pause right now and go to the comments. What would you do? Would you protect your twin sister even after she tried to erase your face? Or would you ensure she faces the full force of the law for what she did? I really need to know if I'm being too harsh, or if I'm finally doing what's right. Because the pressure from my family is making me feel like the villain in my own tragedy. After I found that search history, the fog finally lifted. I realized that as long as I protected her, I was giving her permission to keep destroying me. If she got away with this, what would she do next? Would she try to hurt Mark? Would she try to hurt our future children because they didn't look like her? I couldn't take that risk. I waited until I was discharged from the hospital, my face still tender and covered in specialized silicone sheets to prevent the worst of the scarring. I didn't call her. I didn't text her back. I went straight to the police station with my medical reports and the screenshots of her search history. The detective's face when he saw the photos of my burns. And then the search history was all the validation I needed. He told me this wasn't an accident. It was a felony. Then, I invited Mia to meet me at a public cafe. I needed to see her face one last time before the hammer dropped. She showed up looking distraught, wearing a matching outfit to what I usually wore, acting like she was my biggest supporter. She even had the audacity to bring me a healing tea. When she saw my face, she started crying crocodile tears, reaching out to touch the bandages. I pulled back and laid the printed search history on the table. The look on her face shifted from sad sister to cold stranger in a split second. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. She didn't even deny it. She didn't try to make excuses anymore. She looked at me and said, "Now we finally look like we belong together again. You were getting too far ahead, sis. I just brought you back down to my level. You were always so perfect, so proud of your skin, your career. I just wanted to remind you that you're nothing without me. We're one, remember? If I'm miserable, you should be too." I felt a chill go down my spine that I'll never forget. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me, and it was horrifying. I told her the police were on their way, and that I had already filed a restraining order. She lost it, screaming in the middle of the crowded cafe that I was a traitor, that she did this for us, so we could be the Golden Twins again. She was dragged out in handcuffs, still screaming my name, still insisting that I was the one who was breaking our bond. The months following the arrest were a blur of pain, both physical and legal. My parents went on a full-scale offensive. They hired a high-priced lawyer for Mia, and tried to pressure me into signing an affidavit saying I was confused, and that the chemicals were mine. My own mother told me that scars heal, but a criminal record is forever. I asked her why my face didn't matter as much as Mia's freedom, and she didn't have an answer. She just cried and said I was being cruel. I had to block my entire extended family. Mark was the only person who stood by me. He sat through every painful debridement session, every laser treatment that felt like rubber bands snapping against raw nerves. He held my hand when the bandages finally came off for good, revealing the mottled, uneven texture of my new skin. I felt like a monster, but Mark just kissed the scars and told me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen because I was finally free of the shadow that had been haunting me. In court, Mia tried to plead insanity. She put on a performance, talking about twin telepathy and how she thought she was helping me. But the prosecution played the audio from the cafe. I had recorded our conversation on my phone. When the jury heard her say she brought me back down to her level, the case was effectively over. She was sentenced to 5 years in state prison for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the chemicals. The day she was sentenced, my father looked at me with such pure hatred that I realized I hadn't just lost a sister. I had lost my entire family. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I realized something else. For the first time in 24 years, I wasn't half of a pair. I was just me. My career in aesthetics took a massive hit, but I've pivoted. The months following the arrest were a blur of pain, both physical and legal. My parents went on a full-scale offensive. They hired a high-priced lawyer for Mia, and tried to pressure me into signing an affidavit saying I was confused, and that the chemicals were mine. My own mother told me that scars heal, but a criminal record is forever. I asked her why my face didn't matter as much as Mia's freedom, and she didn't have an answer. She just cried and said I was being cruel. I had to block my entire extended family. Mark was the only person who stood by me. He sat through every painful debridement session, every laser treatment that felt like rubber bands snapping against raw nerves. He held my hand when the bandages finally came off for good, revealing the mottled, uneven texture of my new skin. I felt like a monster, but Mark just kissed the scars and told me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen because I was finally free of the shadow that had been haunting me. In court, Mia tried to plead insanity. She put on a performance, talking about twin telepathy and how she thought she was helping me. But the prosecution played the audio from the cafe. I had recorded our conversation on my phone. When the jury heard her say she brought me back down to her level, the case was effectively over. She was sentenced to 5 years in state prison for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the chemicals. The day she was sentenced, my father looked at me with such pure hatred that I realized I hadn't just lost a sister. I had lost my entire family. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I realized something else. For the first time in 24 years, I wasn't half of a pair. I was just me. My career in aesthetics took a massive hit, but I've pivoted. I now work with burn victims, helping them navigate the psychological and physical journey of scarring. My face is different. It's not the perfect face I used to have, but it's a face that tells a story of survival. I have a slight pulling near my left eye and some permanent discoloration on my cheek, but every time I look in the mirror, I don't see me as twin. I see a woman who was strong enough to choose herself over a toxic bloodline. The wedding finally happened 6 months later. It was small, private, and filled with only the people who truly loved us. I didn't wear a heavy veil to hide my scars. I wore them proudly. Mark and I are starting a new life in a different city, far away from the whispers of our hometown and the toxic influence of my parents. I still get letters from Mia from prison, filled with ramblings about how we'll be the same when she gets out, but I don't read them anymore. I burn them. It's symbolic, I guess. I'm finally letting the fire that she started burn out. This whole experience has taught me that sometimes the most dangerous people in your life are the ones who claim to be your other half. True love doesn't seek to diminish your light just so it can feel brighter. It doesn't try to make you equal by dragging you down into the mud. It lifts you up. It's been a long, painful road, and I'm still healing, but I'm finally living my life for me, not as part of a pair. If you've ever dealt with a toxic family member who tried to hold you back, know that it's okay to walk away, and it's okay to protect yourself. Blood doesn't give someone a right to destroy you. You are allowed to set boundaries, you are allowed to seek justice, and you are allowed to be your own person, regardless of who you shared a womb with. Like this video if you think I made the right choice by calling the police and standing my ground, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story in this journey of healing and justice. I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. Did she get what she deserved, or did I go too far by sending my own twin to prison? Was my family right to be upset, or are they just as toxic as she is? Let's talk about it. Thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.